Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the humid, boot-sucking, Prohibition-era South. A place where the air was thick, the nights were lawless, and the most powerful force in the universe wasn't gravity. It was church-going southern women who absolutely refused to let the police ruin their Saturday night plans. Because before you fall asleep, I want you to imagine something truly absurd. An entire generation of southern ladies, powdered, perfumed, polite, turning into undercover moonshine masterminds the moment the local sheriff blinked. So before we get cozy, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And thank you for suggesting this topic in the first place. It means a lot. If you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Now dim those lights, switch on your fan for that soft white noise breeze, slip under the covers, and maybe tuck your feet in so the imaginary revenuers can't confiscate your socks. And while you settle in, let me ask you the important questions. The questions history class avoided for reasons I frankly consider cowardly. What did it feel like to be a southern woman in the 1920s, running circles around police officers who were so confused half the time they probably needed a flowchart just to understand where the moonshine went? How many gallons of illegal liquor could a respectable lady hide under a church potluck table without breaking eye contact? How much sweet tea did you have to offer an officer before he politely pretended not to see the gin still steaming behind your azalea bushes? Could you convincingly fake innocence while simultaneously sitting on a hollowed-out rocking chair full of contraband? And honestly, how did these women do all this while wearing corsets, heels, and enough perfume to stun a small mule? And now congratulations. You've just woken up in 1923. You're wearing a floral dress, a hat pinned tighter than your budget, and you have a mason jar of questionable legality cooling in your apron pocket. The local sheriff is already suspicious. Your neighbour just winked at you in a way that suggests he knows exactly what you're up to, and the church bake sale is about to become a felony. Good luck. You wake up before sunrise, not because you're disciplined, but because the rooster has decided you don't deserve peace. The house smells like biscuits, wood smoke, and the faint lingering scent of last night's illegal distilling operation. As your bare feet hit the warm pine floors, you stretch, adjust your slip, and prepare for another day of outsmarting men who still haven't figured out how your skirt pockets work. The first thing you notice is the heat. Even this early, the air hangs thick around you, the same way a judgmental church lady hovers near the refreshment table. Southern summers aren't gentle. They sit on your chest like a cat with abandonment issues. You shuffle toward the kitchen, where the fire in the stove is still smouldering from yesterday's biscuit marathon. You open the door for a sliver of air, and the humidity politely refuses to leave your home. Of course it does. Now it's time for your morning uniform, one floral dress, starched just enough to make you look respectable, but roomy enough to conceal a surprising variety of glass jars. You slip it on, smoothing the hem, mentally checking for the sturdiness of the hidden inner pockets. If NASA ever needs help designing spacecraft compartments, they should consult Southern women from the 1920s. Those ladies mastered covert storage decades before modern engineers even had the idea. Let's talk about breakfast. You approach the cast-iron skillet with the confidence of someone who knows the sheriff is patrolling half a mile away and that you have exactly 12 minutes before he decides to drop in for a friendly visit. Your hands move quickly. Butter, salt, flour, and a rhythm you inherited from your mother, who inherited it from her mother, who inherited it from a long line of women who understood that the secret to survival is a full belly and a believable smile. As the biscuits rise, you pull yesterday's batch of moonshine jars from behind the flour bin. You inspect them the same way a jeweller inspects diamonds, carefully, expertly, and with a healthy dose of paranoia. The liquid catches the morning light, clear, sharp, and capable of both inspiring joy and dissolving paint. Perfect. Then comes the sound, wheels crunching gravel. The sheriff's car. Right on time, like indigestion after a church potluck. You slip the jars back behind the flour bin and take a deep breath, letting your face settle into the expression of a woman who has never broken a law in her life, except for maybe jaywalking, and even then only because her hat blew off. You open the door before he knocks. "Morning, Sheriff," you say, your voice soft enough to butter a biscuit. He tips his hat, stepping onto your porch like he's walking into a frontier standoff. Only instead of guns, you have hospitality. Dangerous, delicious hospitality. While he blathers on about routine checks, you casually block his view of the kitchen, where the stove is currently doing its best impression of a low-budget steam engine. You offer him coffee, which he accepts, even though last week he claimed he'd given it up. You've never met a southern man who actually gave anything up except responsibility. He sips, he sighs, he forgets why he's here. This is your morning ritual. Wake up, hide the evidence, feed the law, and pray. The humidity doesn't curl your hair into a shape capable of incriminating you. It's a delicate balance, part domesticity, part espionage, part maternal patience for the incompetence of grown men. When he finally leaves, you exhale the kind of breath you didn't realize you were holding. You wipe your hands, straighten your dress, and check that none of the jars shifted during the commotion. Another morning survived, another day begun, and somehow you haven't even had your coffee yet. You step onto your porch with a smile sweet enough to glaze a ham. The sheriff pulls up in his sputtering Ford, tipping his hat as though he didn't spend last night hiding in your hedges. You offer sweet tea. He forgets his own name. This is the game, Southern charm versus government authority, and charm is undefeated. The air is already warm, carrying that syrupy summer heaviness that makes even the breeze feel like it's gossiping. Cicadas screech in the oak trees like nature's own malfunctioning alarm system. You smooth your dress, tilt your head just so, and give the sheriff a look that suggests you've never so much as jaywalked. Meanwhile, under your porch floorboards, 52 jars of highly illegal moonshine are arranged like a porcelain army awaiting deployment. The sheriff takes the glass from your hand, wraps his fingers around the sweating mason jar, and sighs as though he's just remembered childhood, forgiveness, and the meaning of life. Sweet tea does that to men in the South. It rewrites their moral code. A sane person sees sugar and water. A Southern man sees salvation. "Bam," he says, already forgetting every deputy briefing he had that morning. "We're just doing a routine check," which is adorable. Routine checks don't exist out here. What exists are bored lawmen patrolling dirt roads hoping somebody's cow wandered onto the wrong property, so they have something to report. You usher him toward a rocking chair and sit across from him, hands folded delicately in your lap. This positioning is strategic. Your left side blocks his view of the shed, which is currently puffing out little curls of vapor like a guilty locomotive. You nod sympathetically as he rambles about troublemakers, fully aware that the biggest troublemaker in a 10-mile radius is sitting right where you are, smiling like butter wouldn't melt in your mouth, even though the butter is definitely melting in this heat. He wipes his brow. You lean in. This is where the true art begins. Southern hospitality has rules, unspoken, powerful rules that bind every man below the Mason-Dixon line into polite submission. You offer refreshments. He must accept. You flatter. He must blush. You mention the weather. He must agree it's the hottest summer since 14, even if it snowed last week. These traditions are older than the sheriff, older than his badge, and possibly older than the county itself. "Sheriff," you say softly, "you look just worn out today." The words hit him like a hymn sung directly into his soul. His posture loosens. His suspicion dissolves into the heat like butter in a skillet. He's now emotionally incapable of believing you've ever done anything wrong, including the crime he was literally sent here to investigate. You top off his tea. He doesn't notice that the ice cubes, large, distinct, irregular, are from the same freezer box you used to cool down your latest batch. If he were more observant, he might wonder why your tea tastes faintly like corn liquor and ambition, but he isn't. And you don't encourage thinking during these visits. It's bad for business. He asks if he can take a look around. You gasp lightly, hand to your chest, delivering the exact expression Southern mothers use when a child spills grape juice on the church carpet. "Why, of course, Sheriff," you breathe, "but I must warn you I haven't swept the shed." He freezes. The shed. A place of dust, cobwebs, potential spiders, and the faint possibility of manual labour. "No need," he says quickly. "You knew that would happen. No man willingly enters a shed unless something inside it owes him money." You chat a while longer. Gardens, church events, scandalous goings-on involving Mrs. Aldridge's mysteriously disappearing peach cobbler. He drinks 2 more glasses of tea. By the time he stands to leave, he's so soothed. He couldn't enforce a parking violation. He tips his hat again, stepping off your porch with the swagger of a man who accomplished nothing but feels spiritually fulfilled. "Always a pleasure, Ma'am." You wave sweetly as he climbs into his sputtering Ford, turns it around, and drives off into the dust cloud he came from. Only when he's out of sight do you exhale, wipe your brow, and retrieve the jars from under the porch. Hospitality is a beautiful thing. It's also the only reason you're not in jail. It's Sunday morning, and your hat is bigger than your sins. Inside the church basement, doilies conceal mason jars, and hymnals hide recipe notes written like coded military orders. The pastor preaches about righteousness, completely unaware that the choir loft is doubling as a distribution centre. You glide into the sanctuary with the same practiced grace you use when carrying a tray of moonshine-filled jelly jars. Every rustling skirt and whispered greeting carries 2 meanings. The polite surface one and the one underneath that translates to, "Did you bring the batch?" The church bell gongs overhead, shaking vibrations through the rafters and through the 6 crates of contraband tucked neatly behind the baptismal gowns. Your hat tilts precariously as you take your seat, an architectural marvel of ribbons and feathers built specifically to distract anyone who might notice the faint smell of fermenting corn drifting from your handbag. You smile at the ladies in the pew ahead of you. They smile back. Everyone here knows what's going on except the men who assume the church is running on prayer alone, not realizing prayer has been financially supplemented by 120-proof ingenuity for years. The choir begins its warm-up, those sweet angelic voices rising in perfect harmony. What the congregation doesn't know is that each soprano is standing on a hollow platform, one lift of the floorboard, and suddenly the altos become the most efficient clandestine delivery team this side of the Mississippi. The high notes aren't the only thing they can hit with precision. Let's talk about the basement. While the pastor thanks the Lord for blessings seen and unseen, you descend the narrow wooden stairs into a scene that looks less like a fellowship hall and more like a tactical command centre. Folding tables hold casseroles, crocheted tablecloths, and row after row of mason jars camouflaged under layers of lace. If the law ever raided this place, they'd think it was just a suspiciously enthusiastic quilting club. Sister Agnes oversees the operation with the intensity of a 4-star general. Her Bible is stuffed with prayer lists that just happen to include measurements for the perfect mash ratio. She gives you a subtle nod, today's signal that her cousin from the next county is waiting outside with a truck bed disguised as a travelling gospel library. As you help arrange potluck dishes, you slip small jars into hollowed-out bundt cakes, a technique perfected over generations. The trick is simple. If anyone asks why the cake is so heavy, you say it's dense with love. No one questions love at church. Upstairs, the sermon gathers steam. Pastor Henry thunders about temptation. which is ironic given the fact that the majority of his congregation has been secretly supplying half the county with top-shelf illegal spirits. He gestures broadly, unaware that every time he lifts his arm, the fabric of his robe sways dangerously close to a concealed crate of jars disguised as hymnals. The Lord works in mysterious ways, but the Ladies' Auxiliary works in extremely efficient ones. After the final hymn, it's time. The congregation filters out, shaking hands, praising the sermon, pretending nothing unusual happened, while half the children are carrying baskets that definitely do not contain cookies. You take your place near the exit, offering warm goodbyes and the occasional discreet handoff. A deputy once walked through these very doors for security reasons. He left with 3 jars of apple preserves and the belief that churchwomen were simply generous beyond measure. Bless his heart. By the time the afternoon sun hits the stained glass windows, the operation is complete. The choir loft is empty, the basement spotless, and the casseroles mysteriously lighter than they arrived. Peace settled over the building like nothing illegal ever occurred, and technically nothing did occur. It merely passed through. You adjust your hat, straighten your skirt, and step into the warm southern breeze. Bootlegging may be a crime everywhere else, but here in the Lord's house it's just another ministry. You roll out dough like any respectable woman, except you're also using the kitchen heat to evaporate the last traces of contraband off your copper coil. Nothing smells more innocent than fresh bread, which is why it's the perfect cover for your second career. The morning sun spills through your kitchen window, warming the wooden counter exactly where you've dusted it with flour. If a stranger walked in right now, they'd think you were preparing for a charming, wholesome day of domestic tranquility. And in a way you are. Domesticity is your camouflage, your quiet fortress, your alibi baked into golden, buttery perfection. You fold the dough, letting it puff beneath your fingertips. The oven radiates a cozy glow, the kind of warmth that makes neighbours sigh wistfully whenever they walk past your house. They assume you're making breakfast. They're half right. The other half involves a complicated system of tubing, a cooling pan, and the faint but unmistakable scent of liquor that only someone with a badge and too much ambition might notice. But fortunately for you, police officers in your county have never been accused of having excellent noses. Let's talk about multitasking. Real southern multitasking. You stir the gravy with one hand while quietly tapping the copper coil with the other to make sure it's fully dry. Your granny taught you this method years ago. If the kitchen smells like biscuits, she'd whisper, no one will ever question what you're really cooking. She was right. The smell of fresh bread is a universal sedative. It can calm children, charm neighbours, distract lawmen, and convince even the nosiest busybody that you're nothing more than a picture of culinary innocence. As the biscuits rise, you move to the real work, inspecting the jars from yesterday's batch. Each one is clean, polished, and looks as harmless as a jar of peaches. You wipe your brow, the heat from the oven making little curls of steam rise from the copper still hidden beneath your kitchen table. If you lean down, you can still feel the warmth radiating from it, as if the machine itself is slightly offended at being relegated to the shadows while your biscuits get the spotlight. Then there's the sudden crunch of footsteps on your porch. You freeze. Not dramatically, just enough to remind yourself that you are at this very moment standing between baked goods and a federal offence. You peek through the curtain. It's only Mrs. Delaney from next door armed with a basket of laundry she wants to complain about. Bless her nosy heart. You crack the door open just wide enough so she can't see inside. "Oh, honey," she says, inhaling deeply. "That smells divine." You force a shy smile. "Just biscuits." She beams. "You always were such a good influence on the neighbourhood." You nod, silently calculating how many steps she's standing away from a Class C felony. When she finally totters off, trailing perfume that smells like gardenias and judgment, you let out a breath that could power a steam engine. You return to the stove, flip the biscuits, and check the coil again. Dry, clean, innocent. Next, you prepare the delivery containers. Today's orders include 1 birthday pie, 2 casseroles for the bereaved, and a jar hidden inside a hollowed-out sugar tin for Sister Melba, who insists she's using it strictly for arthritis, which is exactly the lie you also tell yourself when you sample it. You wrap each package with the tenderness of a woman sending food to a potluck and the paranoia of a spy smuggling state secrets. The biscuits cool beside them, radiating a wholesome aura that could absolve you of nearly anything short of treason. Finally, you sit at the kitchen table, nibbling a warm biscuit, you deserve it, and checking the window for anyone suspicious. The breeze carries the scent of butter and flour through the room, a sensory lullaby masking the darker, sharper undertones of distillation equipment hiding in plain sight. You've managed to accomplish what few people can, breakfast and bootlegging all before 10 a.m, and honestly, the biscuits are the least impressive part. As you tighten your corset, you feel the clink of a tiny flask tucked safely between whalebone ribs. The male officers who raid your house later will be so nervous about propriety they'll barely open a drawer. Bless their hearts. You walk out the door, smuggling enough liquor to fuel a barn dance. Corsets were never designed for comfort. They were designed to make you look delicate and fainting prone, which is ironic considering you're currently using yours as a tactical storage unit. You pull the laces tighter, drawing a deep breath that sounds more like an apology to your own lungs. The flask settles perfectly against your sternum, cool metal hidden beneath layers of lace and intimidation. You look at yourself in the mirror, chin lifted, waist cinched, posture straighter than a church deacon on Sunday. You appear prim, proper, and entirely unlikely to be transporting illegal goods across county lines. Which is why this works. A corset isn't just a garment, it's a shield, a force field, a polite Victorian lie wrapped around your torso like a steel trap hug. Before you leave, you run through your mental checklist. Is the floss secure? Yes. Is the backup floss secure? Also, yes. Can you breathe? Not really. But breathing is optional when the alternative is getting caught with a contraband shipment tucked into your underpinnings. You slip on your shawl, the one that adds absolutely nothing to your outfit except plausible deniability, and step into the bright southern morning. Walking in a corset full of moonshine is an art form. You must move gracefully enough that nothing clinks, but briskly enough that no deputy can catch up. Your gait becomes a cross between a waltz and a military march, each step perfectly calibrated to avoid revealing that you are essentially a mobile liquor cabinet. Let's talk about lawmen. Southern officers of the 1920s were brave, determined, and possessed a stubborn moral compass that pointed directly toward your property at all times. But they also shared a fatal weakness, an utter terror of women's clothing. Corsets, petticoats, lace trims, these things frightened them more than moonshiners with shotguns. A man who could charge into gunfire without blinking would collapse emotionally at the thought of rifling through a lady's delicates. This, of course, is your superpower. You remember last week's search, when 3 deputies stormed your sitting room, tripping over your crocheted rugs and apologising to your furniture. Not a single one dared to touch your corset drawer. If they had, they would have discovered the small barrel tap you keep tucked beside your bloomers. But no, they stood 5 feet away from it, hats in hand, looking like schoolboys terrified of being scolded. Back in the present, you stroll into town like a perfectly innocent citizen. Neighbours wave from porches. A dog barks cheerfully at you. The preacher's wife compliments your hat, unaware that your entire rib cage is now a walking Prohibition-era puzzle box. You lift your chin and give her a warm smile, careful not to bend enough to cause your flasks to collide like dueling wind chimes. You pause by the general store pretending to admire the new shipment of sewing notions. Inside your corset, the liquor warms with your body heat, a reminder that you are, at this very moment, defying federal law simply by existing. A reckless thrill races up your spine, or perhaps that's just the lack of oxygen. Hard to say. When you reach the safe house, also known as Miss Ruby May's backyard chicken coop, you discreetly shift your weight. One by one, you retrieve the hidden flasks with a sleight of hand motion that would impress a magician. Ruby May takes them, shakes her head, and mutters, "You're gonna crack a rib one day." You shrug. It's a small price to pay for entrepreneurship. By the time you head home, your corset feels light. Your breathing returns to something resembling normal, and your conscience remains blissfully untroubled. After all, every woman deserves pockets. You just took that idea a little farther than most. You adjust your skirt hem, making sure the hidden hem pockets don't jingle. Your neighbours think you're on your way to quilting club. In reality, you're delivering 5 jars of highly illegal happiness across county lines while maintaining perfect posture. The floral dress you're wearing today is a masterpiece of deception. Soft cotton, dainty pattern, hemline fluttering just enough to look innocent. But beneath that gentle sway lies an engineering marvel of hidden compartments. You walk like a lady, but internally you are a stealth aircraft. Each step is choreographed. Heel, toe, hush the jars, breathe. You've practiced this routine enough to qualify for an Olympic event no one will ever acknowledge. The road ahead stretches out under the July sun, shimmering in the heat like a giant cast-iron skillet. Cicadas hum overhead in the trees, an overstimulated, permanent choir that never learn the meaning of rest. You clutch your handbag, though it doesn't hold anything illegal. It's just there for the theatrics. A lady without a handbag attracts more suspicion than a lady with too many skirts. As you begin your walk toward the county line, Mrs. Hargrove waves from her porch. She squints at you with the acute suspicion only a lifelong gossip can muster. You wave back sweetly, knowing full well she's mentally categorizing the shade of your dress for future reporting. You offer her the kind of smile that could get you acquitted in most small-town courts. She relaxes, convinced you're simply heading off to knit something unnecessary. Half a mile down the road, you reach the fork where the official quilting club route veers left. You, however, take the right path, a shady dirt road framed by honeysuckle vines and the occasional, vengeful mosquito. The jars in your hem clink softly as you step over a tree root. You freeze. Even the mosquitoes seem to pause in anticipation. Nothing happens. You take another careful step. You live in an era where rum running is dominated by men, loud, dusty men with engines that roar and suspensions that scream for mercy. You, however, are a different breed. You don't outrun officers, you outsmart them. Your entire strategy is based on the universally accepted fact that no man wants to pull over a woman wearing a floral dress in the middle of the afternoon. It disrupts their sense of decorum. They would rather follow you from a distance, scratching their heads and praying you aren't on your way to complain about potholes. Today's delivery destination is a barn belonging to the Whittaker brothers, men who drink moonshine the way other people drink water. At least they pay well. The jars in your hem contain some of your finest work, crystal clear, smooth, and potent enough to singe the eyebrows off anyone who inhales too deeply. Reputation is everything in this line of work, and yours is impeccable. If Southern bootlegging had Yelp reviews, you'd be 5 stars with comments like excellent flavour, discreet service, and did not get arrested once. As you walk, you practice your cover story. Quilting club, fabric sale, visiting an elderly aunt. Any of these could work, though you know from experience that the most effective lie is the simplest. Sheriff, I'm late. Officers clear a path instantly. No man wants to risk delaying a woman running household errands. That's how wars start. Up ahead, you see a dust cloud. A car approaching. Your heartbeat quickens, tapping gently against the jars hidden in your skirt. You step aside as the vehicle slows. It's a deputy. Of course it is. He leans out the window, tipping his hat. "Afternoon, ma'am. You headed somewhere?" You offer a demure smile. "Quilting club." He nods like that explains everything, because to him it does. Quilting club is sacred, mysterious, and entirely beyond the comprehension of law enforcement. He wishes you well and drives off toward the county seat, blissfully unaware that he just escorted a travelling distillery across jurisdictional boundaries. When you finally reach the Whitaker barn and hand off the jars, the brothers praise the quality, pay generously, and send you on your way with fresh tomatoes from their garden, your unofficial hazard pay. On your journey home, the jars are gone, your skirt feels lighter, and for the first time today, you allow yourself a relaxed breath. Rum running is dangerous, high stakes, mortal risk. But doing it in a floral dress, that's what makes you a legend. Nothing in the world looks more innocent than a sweating glass of sweet tea, which is why it makes the perfect hiding spot. Police officers can watch you all day and still not realise that tea is 40% sugar and 60% don't worry about it, officer. Sweet tea in the South is more than a beverage. It's a cultural force, an emotional support fluid, and a politically neutral currency accepted at every porch, potluck, and family feud mediation session. You stir yours slowly, watching sunlight catch the amber liquid, the ice cubes clinking gently like tiny accomplices. To outsiders, this drink says, "Hello neighbour, let's chat." To insiders it says, "There might be something stronger in here, but that's between me and the Lord." Your kitchen counter is lined with mason jars, some filled with legal tea, others filled with illegal everything else. The trick is labelling nothing. That way, even you don't know which jar is which without giving it a sniff, and if you don't know, no officer can reasonably expect to. That's what you call proactive legal strategy. Let's talk about the house call that changed everything, Sheriff Tompkins dropping by unannounced last Tuesday. He stepped onto your porch, boots dusty, eyes narrow, suspicion written all over his face in a font so large it didn't even fit on the page. He cleared his throat the way men do when they're preparing to accuse you of something vague. "You got anything you'd like to tell me, ma'am?" You nodded calmly, handed him a glistening glass of sweet tea, and watched as his resolve crumbled like a biscuit under gravy. He took a sip. His shoulders relaxed, his eyelids drooped, his moral compass spun like a weather vane in a hurricane. "Fine day, isn't it?" he said. You smiled. Sweet tea does that. It performs emotional chiropractic, gently realigns the intentions of anyone who drinks it. Now your special tea isn't dangerous. It's not even that strong, unless someone chugs the whole thing, which only happens when a deputy forgets his manners. The moonshine infusion is subtle, hiding behind layers of sugar so intense it could power a small locomotive. The sweetness does all the heavy lifting like a polite southern aunt covering for your misbehaviour at a family gathering. You keep a pitcher in the fridge at all times. Not because you drink it constantly, but because hospitality in the South is mandatory. If someone stops by, you offer tea. If officers stop by, you definitely offer tea. If revenuers stop by, well, you offer tea, take the Lord's name in vain internally, and then offer more tea. Sometimes you serve it from a cut glass pitcher, sometimes in a mismatched mason jar, depending on how authentic you want to seem. Authenticity is important. The more everyday the container, the more invisible the truth becomes. Nobody suspects crime when it's wrapped in domesticity. They suspect recipes, and women, but mostly recipes. And then there's the travelling version, your famous sweet tea thermos. A staple of church picnics, quilting meetups, barn dances, and secret midnight runs. The thermos has seen more miles than the sheriff's Ford. It rattles faintly when you walk, its contents sloshing with purpose. Deputies tip their hats to it, thinking it holds nothing but refreshment. If only they knew. During the summer, sweet tea becomes an environmental experience. The glass sweats. You sweat. The air sweats. Everything glistens just enough to blur the edges of legality. A deputy once claimed he could smell wrongdoing from a mile away. You responded by pouring him a glass, patting his arm and saying, "Sweetheart, that's just humidity." He agreed, out loud, fully convinced. As you sit on your porch, rocking gently in your chair, tea in hand, you watch the world go by. Cars rattle down the dirt road. Birds gossip loudly in the eaves. Somewhere, a jar clinks in your pantry as it settles into place. You don't move, you don't flinch. You just sip your tea. Sweet tea is camouflage, protection, a sugary shield against government oversight. And honestly, if the police ever did learn the truth, you know exactly what you'd do. Pour them another glass. Your backyard garden looks ordinary. Tomatoes, okra, a judgmental scarecrow, but beneath a carefully placed trellis sits the heartbeat of your operation. Are still so well disguised even raccoons can't find it, and they can smell sin at 1,000 yards. The garden is your sanctuary, your cover story, and your favourite stage set. The tomatoes stand tall, glowing red and righteous in the morning sun. The okra leans slightly left, like it's eavesdropping. The basil waves politely whenever a breeze passes through. Everything looks harmless enough, the sort of wholesome tableau the Ladies' Gardening Association would applaud. But step 1 foot closer and the truth reveals itself, if, of course, you know what you're looking for. Most people don't. Most people see flowers and vegetables and assume you're living a pure soil-based lifestyle. What they do not assume is that you're running a covert distillation facility directly beneath their admiration. Let's talk about the trellis. A wooden masterpiece draped in climbing beans, it bows gently under their green weight. But the beans aren't the star of the show. They are the curtains. The trellis hides everything. The copper coil, the kettle drum, the emergency kill switch your cousin welded after that incident involving a deputy, a thunderstorm, and 3 jars exploding at once. Each slat of the trellis is placed with mathematical precision. You've measured angles, checked sight lines, even crouched behind a shrub pretending to be an officer to make sure nothing suspicious is visible. Anyone peeking into your yard sees nothing except produce and pride. Now, the scarecrow. It wasn't always judgmental. You added the expression after the first fox tried to chew through your mash barrel. You stitched a new frown on its burlap face, carved sharper eyebrows, and added a hat so dramatic it casts suspicion on everything beneath it. Your scarecrow radiates accusation. Birds give it a wide berth. Deputies give it a wider one. The real trick, though, is the sound. Stills bubble. They hiss. They mutter dark secrets during the heating process. But your garden is loud. Cicadas scream. Bees hum. Your neighbour's rooster never stops complaining. And you've placed a wind chime nearby, deliberately off-key because you want intruders to flee the moment they hear it. The wind chime clangs constantly, covering every metallic whisper rising from beneath the trellis. A deputy once wandered back here during a routine check. You offered him sweet tea and prayed silently. He glanced at your vegetables, nodded approvingly, and made a comment about how okra never behaves in his garden. You agreed sympathetically while biting the inside of your cheek. He didn't kneel, didn't inspect the soil, didn't brush aside the vines. Because in the South, snooping through a woman's garden is asking to be hexed. Everyone knows that. You also maintain decoy areas, strategically messy flower beds, old pots, and a spot where you plant squash you don't even like. That's where you direct attention when needed. If someone asks what you're working on, you gesture vaguely to the squash and sigh dramatically. Nothing ends a conversation faster than a monologue about squash blight. Every season, you rotate the plants, you add new trellis pieces, you adjust the scarecrow's expression. You clean the coil with vinegar and discretion. Running a still is science, hiding one is art. Today, as the sun climbs, the still begins its gentle hum under the earth. You crouch to adjust the cooling pan, your fingers brushing the warm copper beneath layers of leaves. A tomato drops beside you, plump and red, like it approves of your efforts. You straighten up, dust your hands, and admire your creation. Rows of vegetables, dappled sunlight, a handmade trellis concealing enough contraband equipment to earn you a week of headlines and a lifetime of family bragging rights. Your garden is thriving, your operation is thriving, and no one, absolutely no one, suspects a thing. After all, who would dare accuse a lady with such beautiful tomatoes? Your neighbour knocks rhythmically, 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, the universal signal that her cousin's husband's uncle has a fresh batch ready. You exchange jars, gossip and casserole dishes like a covert culinary rebellion. The system developed naturally, the way moss grows on stones or the way your aunt develops opinions about everyone else's life choices. No one sat down and drafted rules. No one held a meeting. The underground supply chain simply bloomed, quietly, efficiently, under the watchful shade of magnolia trees and the blissful ignorance of the county sheriff. You swing open the door to find your neighbour, Mrs. Carter, balancing a casserole dish wrapped in a gingham towel. Inside, you know, is not a casserole, not unless casseroles have begun to slosh. She hands it to you with the seriousness of a surgeon presenting a heart transplant. "Be careful," she whispers. "It's still warm." Of course it is. Her cousin's husband's uncle has a distillery tucked in the holler, and the man never cools anything before shipping it out. He once delivered jars so hot they melted through the wagon's paint. You respond with a nod, the kind that communicates both gratitude and illicit respect. You hand her your own offering, 2 jars wrapped in yesterday's newspaper and hidden in a bundt cake pan. She peeks inside, raises her eyebrows approvingly and pats your arm. "Bless you," she says, like you've just performed an exorcism. "Let's talk about the network itself. It's not just the 2 of you. Oh no, this movement is larger than that. It stretches across porches, gardens, quilting circles, potlucks, church basements, beauty parlours, and any place where women gather and talk with the speed of a telegraph and the accuracy of a courtroom stenographer. A message whispered at 9 a.m. on one porch can be fully operational intelligence by lunchtime. Supply lines weave through the neighbourhood like a spiderweb made of cast iron. Mrs. Davenport handles sugar procurement for canning, she tells the grocer, while Miss Lila manages distribution routes under the guise of delivering choir materials. And old Mrs. Perkins, she stores the extra equipment in the shed behind her hydrangeas because the law would never dare knock on the home of a woman that feared and adored. Your own role is quality control. Every community needs someone who can tell when a batch is smooth as summer rain or when it tastes like regret in liquid form. You take pride in your craft. Some women sew, some paint. You ensure alcohol enters the county without taking anyone's eyebrows off. You and Mrs. Carter step inside for a moment, the screen door gently slapping shut behind you. She settles into a chair, fanning herself with a church bulletin. You pour sweet tea, real sweet tea this time, not the specialised variety, and the 2 of you chat softly. "Well," she says, "the Johnson boys got caught last night. Tried to hide there still under a tarp printed with clouds. You wince. Bless their hearts. Everyone knows cloud-printed tarps don't fool anyone. You sip your tea, thinking about how the entire county seems to run on a mixture of sugar, gossip, and mild criminality." Mrs. Carter leans closer. "We'll need to move fast," she says. "The sheriff's been sniffing around again." You nod. That man's intuition is remarkable, but tragically misdirected. He can sense wrongdoing from 3 miles away. He just always thinks it's being done by men. The perfect blind spot. As Mrs. Carter heads out, casserole dish now empty but her bundt pan clinking faintly, she gives the same 3 taps on the door frame, 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. It isn't a goodbye. It's a confirmation, a promise of continued operations. The underground supply chain thrives not because the women are reckless, but because they are organised, efficient, determined, and perhaps most importantly, significantly smarter than the men trying to catch them. You close the door behind her, tuck the warm casserole of sin under your arm and smile. In this neighbourhood, the PTA has nothing on the Moonshine distribution committee. You hang sheets on the line, white and fluttering like surrender flags. But behind them sits a wagon load of moonshine. If the sheriff asks what's under the sheets, you answer simply, unmentionables, and he flees like you threatened him with algebra. Laundry day is your favourite battlefield. It smells like soap and sunshine, looks pure as a hymn book, and secretly conceals more felonies than the county courthouse on sentencing day. You shake out another crisp sheet, the cotton snapping in the breeze like it knows it's part of something heroic. The clothesline stretches across your yard, anchored between 2 pecan trees older than the sheriff's authority. Between the fluttering sheets you can see glimpses of your wagon, its bed filled with jars nestled under quilts. The jars glint faintly when the wind cooperates, but the sheets keep them safe, like a protective curtain shielding your inventory from the prying eyes of men who are constitutionally incapable of looking directly at women's laundry. Let's talk about this sheriff. Sheriff Tompkins is determined, earnest, and deeply allergic to embarrassment. He approaches any hint of women's business with the caution of a man walking barefoot through a wasp nest. His greatest fear isn't danger, it's impropriety. He would rather tackle a bear than accidentally glimpse a brassiere. That's why laundry day is the perfect cover for your most ambitious smuggling operations. As you pin up another sheet, you hear the familiar rumble of his Ford sputtering toward your property, the car sounding like it too. Wants no part of this encounter. You lift your chin, settle your expression into polite concern, and prepare yourself for the performance of the day. He parks crookedly under your oak tree, hops out, and straightens his belt like it might give him moral support. "Afternoon, ma'am," he calls, trying to look anywhere except at the sheet swaying behind you. You smile. "Sheriff." He clears his throat. "We got a report of suspicious activity in the area." "Suspicious?" "Certainly not. Unless someone finds it suspicious that you're working harder than any woman should have to on a Wednesday morning." You gesture vaguely toward your laundry baskets, which contain exactly 1 towel and 9 jars wrapped like delicate linens. "Well," you say warmly, "you'll have to forgive the mess. I've got underthings drying in the sun." Sheriff Tompkins visibly folds in on himself like a gentleman's accordion. His face turns pink, then red, then whatever colour lies between shame and heat stroke. "No need to explain, ma'am," he stammers, staring at the sky with great interest. "Ladies' things are none of my, concern." You nod solemnly, as though discussing a personal tragedy. Some of these pieces are very delicate. He takes a full step back. "Say no more," his voice cracks. Behind the sheets, one of the jars shifts with a soft clink. You casually shake out a pillowcase to cover the sound, releasing a cloud of lavender-scented dust that swirls around you like a magician's flourish. The sheriff doesn't question it. He looks grateful to be alive. You take a few strategically placed steps to block his view of the wagon, then lift a corner of a sheet to demonstrate your laundry commitment. He slaps a hand over his eyes, horrified. "Ma'am, please! Don't trouble yourself. You drop the sheet. As you wish." He asks a few more half-hearted questions, all while looking at everything except the moonshine wagon sitting 15 feet away. You answer, kindly but vaguely, offering him a glass of sweet tea for his troubles. He declines, mumbling something about needing to get back to the station. In a final show of moral panic, he tips his hat, spins on his heel, and practically dives into his car. The tyres kick up dust as he retreats, taking his dignity with him. You watch him disappear down the road, then turn back to your laundry with a satisfied smile. Nothing outsmarts the law quite like a well-timed load of whites. Your child toddles into the yard, dragging a wooden duck and accidentally kicking a jar into perfect concealment. You give them a cookie for their service to the family business. Toddlers are unpredictable forces of nature, tiny, sticky hurricanes powered by naps and stubbornness. But in the world of 1920s southern moonshining, they are also unexpectedly useful. Not intentionally, of course. Your child's job is to colour on walls, drool on things, and insist on carrying objects they can barely lift. Yet somehow, their chaotic gravitational pull has saved your operation more times than any adult with a plan ever has. Today is no different. You watch as your little one wobbles across the yard, cheeks flushed, hair pointing in 11 directions. The wooden duck thunks along behind them, its wheels squeaking in protest. They stop, glance around with the authority of a foreman inspecting a worksite, and then, completely by accident, deliver a perfect strategically important kick to a jar resting dangerously in plain sight. It rolls under the porch, disappearing as neatly as if an adult had placed it there on purpose. You nearly applaud. This is why you never underestimate children. Their walking misdirection. A toddler in motion draws every pair of eyes, every ounce of attention, and every misplaced suspicion. Deputies may be trained to track footprints in the woods, but none of them can interpret the erratic zigzags of a 2-year-old. It's like trying to draw conclusions from a chicken that learned geometry. Let's talk about yesterday's incident. The sheriff's deputy came sniffing around after rumours. You saw his shadow before you saw his face, a bad sign, generally. But before you could prepare, your toddler burst from the house wearing nothing but overalls and the raw confidence of youth. They marched directly up to the deputy, shoved a fistful of dandelions into his hand, and demanded he admire them. He froze. You watched his brain short-circuit. He is a man who can withstand bootleggers armed with shotguns, but a sticky child offering flowers? That's above his pay grade. While he stuttered through a compliment, your child wandered back inside, heroically knocking over a strategically placed laundry basket that just happened to conceal a crate of jars. The thud was loud enough to concern any parent, but confusing enough that the deputy assumed you simply needed sturdier wicker. This is the magic of toddlers. Their innocence is like diplomatic immunity. They could walk directly into a crime scene holding evidence in both hands, and officers would just pat their heads and ask if they're being good for mama. Back in the present, your toddler plops down in the grass and begins to chew on something absolutely not intended for chewing. You swoop in, exchange the contraband twig for a cookie, and praise them for being mama's big helper, even though their primary contribution is chaos. Still, chaos is useful. Deputies show up unexpectedly, send the child outside, need to delay a neighbour's wandering curiosity, hand the toddler a spoon, they'll create enough noise to distract the entire block, need to convince an officer there's absolutely nothing suspicious happening behind the barn. Let the child toddle toward them with arms open wide, babbling nonsense syllables that sound vaguely like a confession, but absolutely aren't. Even better, toddlers are natural stash guards. No deputy on earth wants to search anywhere near a child's play area. They take one look at scattered blocks, jam-covered toys, and the unmistakable aroma of mystery diaper, and they back away like the ground is leather. Which, to be fair, it might be. Your toddler, unaware of their vital role in local organised crime, giggles as a butterfly flits past. They chase it, narrowly avoiding the exact spot where you buried last week's delivery. You wipe your brow. angels, you think. Come in many forms, some come in overalls. As the sun dips and the jars are safely collected, your toddler toddles back toward the porch, arms open. You pick them up, kissing their forehead. Your greatest liability is also your most effective decoy, and all it took was one cookie. Your azaleas bloom aggressively each spring, hiding 5 crates of moonshine under blossoms so pretty, even federal agents hesitate to disturb them. The petals smell like innocence. The crates smell like crime. Azaleas were sent by the gardening gods for one purpose: to be so overwhelmingly beautiful that no one questions what's underneath them. You didn't plan to turn your yard into a pink, perfume-drenched smuggling depot, but nature insisted. Every April, those bushes explode into colour like they've been training all winter for a floral fireworks competition. Neighbours coo, bees celebrate, women from church ask for clippings. You oblige them all, secure in the knowledge that not a single one of them suspects the bushes are also sitting atop a felony. This is the secret strength of the southern landscape: lush, dramatic, and weaponized. Your azaleas form a natural fortress. Their branches curve just low enough to hide wooden crates, and their roots seem to understand their mission, gripping the soil with the protective instinct of a mother shielding her young. It's beautiful, it's practical, it's almost patriotic. Let's talk about the agents who came snooping last season. 2 men from the federal government, stiff as ironing boards and allergic to southern humidity. They arrived in dark suits, sweating like ham under heat lamps, convinced they were about to uncover a major operation. You led them around the yard with a gentle smile, showing them the vegetable patch, the chicken coop, the rain barrel. Then one of them pointed at your azaleas. "Mind if we take a look under there, ma'am?" You tilted your head, widened your eyes, and said, "Oh, sweetheart, the bees are terrible this time of year." That was all it took. These men, who supposedly face danger daily, took one synchronized step back. Federal training does not prepare agents for insects, flowers, or southern passive aggression. One bee buzzed by, not even stung, just announced itself, and both men nearly tripped over each other retreating. "Maybe we'll, focus on the perimeter," one muttered. You nodded thoughtfully, as if this were a wise choice and not a complete surrender. Meanwhile, the azalea bushes rustled smugly in the breeze, fully aware they'd won the encounter without lifting a single petal. The truth is, your azaleas do most of the heavy lifting in this operation. You prune them carefully, shaping them like enormous, guilt-free topiaries. People admire them. Some envy them. No one suspects them. It's a perfect ecosystem. Beauty on top, bootlegging beneath. Even the soil seems complicit, rich, dark, and disturbingly good at muffling sound should a jar clink where it shouldn't. And then there's watering duty, which doubles as reconnaissance. You stroll casually with your tin watering can, humming something pleasant, checking for raccoon activity. Raccoons love moonshine and have zero sense of boundaries, and making sure the crates haven't shifted. You kneel, fluff the petals, and pretend to worry about leaf spot while actually counting inventory. If anyone glances out their window, they see a devoted gardener, not a highly organized distributor of illegal spirits. Sometimes, while tending the bushes, you think about how many women in your neighborhood rely on plants for cover. Mrs. Bennett hides jars under her hydrangeas. Leela May stores empty bottles in her herb patch. And everybody knows the Wainwright sisters never invited anyone to see their roses, because roses don't bloom that large unless something suspicious is buried under them. The azaleas sway gently as you check the last crate, their blossoms brushing your arm like co-conspirators. The sun dips low, casting a warm glow over petals and plywood alike. No federal agent would dare disrupt something this lovely. No deputy wants to get tangled in branches, and no plant in your yard is more committed to obstruction of justice. Nature is beautiful. Nature is forgiving. nature is also your most reliable accomplice. You casually mention at the beauty parlor that the widow Simmons might be hiding something in her barn. Instantly, every officer in town gallops there, leaving your entire road clear for deliveries. You didn't lie. You just didn't tell them it was kittens. The beauty parlor is the real nerve center of town, more powerful than the sheriff's office, the mayor's house, and the post office combined. The moment you push open the screen door, the smell of hairspray, hot metal, and a faint undercurrent of burnt curls hits you like a humid breeze full of secrets. The women inside are arranged under hairdryers like generals under helmets, each one armed with more intel than the entire federal government. You take your seat in Miss Geneva's chair, she of the sharp scissors and sharper observations. She asks how you're doing. You say, "Oh, fine," as casual as someone commenting on the weather. Then you drop the line. "Did you hear the widow Simmons has been keeping things in her barn?" Not a sound remains in the room except the low roar of hairdryers and the faint plink of curlers dropping into a metal bowl. 6 pairs of eyes lift. Even the woman under the bonnet, who hasn't heard anything clearly in 10 years, looks up, sensing the change in atmospheric pressure. You don't elaborate. That's the beauty of gossip done right. You let silence do the heavy lifting. Miss Geneva raises an eyebrow, a high-ranking gesture. "Things," she asks, comb in hand. You shrug like a woman who has witnessed something shocking but is too polite to say more. "I'm sure it's nothing." The phrase "I'm sure it's nothing" is Southern code for wake up the National Guard. Within an hour, the rumour has infiltrated the town like a cloud of perfume, sweet, omnipresent, impossible to trace back to its origin. Men at the hardware store whisper. The sheriff overhears. A deputy tells another deputy who tells his cousin who tells his barber. And before sunset, the county's entire law enforcement fleet is thundering down the widow's dirt road. Meanwhile, you watch from your porch, sipping sweet tea and enjoying the sound of distant shouting, as officers tear apart the widow's property in search of contraband. You feel a little bad, but only a little, because the widow Simmons is, of course, hiding something. 6 kittens, the fluffiest contraband imaginable. The officers return empty-handed but deeply suspicious, convinced they narrowly missed the bust of the century. You wave politely as they pass by, hiding a smile behind your glass. Let's talk strategy. Gossip isn't just idle chatter, it's your most effective diversion tactic. Whisper something ambiguous about barns, sheds, cellars, or any building with planks and shadows, and you instantly redirect all male attention toward the wrong location. Men love a mystery they can solve with hammers and shouting. Women prefer the kind they can solve with eyebrow raises and strategic silence. Your deliveries go perfectly while the officers are preoccupied. You pass jars to Mrs. Carter. You collect empty crates from the Wainwright sisters. You even sneak 2 fresh jars to the pastor's wife, who claims they're for medicinal reasons, though you've never seen anyone diagnose themselves so enthusiastically. By the time the sheriff realizes nothing illegal exists on the widow's property except an unusually aggressive rooster, you've completed every errand and returned home with your hair still perfectly set from the beauty parlor. Tomorrow, another rumor will bloom, maybe something about Mr. Aldridge's mysterious late-night lantern sightings, or the Henderson boys' strange smoke trail, or that new family down the road who don't quite seem right. You'll choose whatever floats best on the wind. You don't lie, not really. You just offer the town a direction, and if that direction happens to be exactly where you aren't committing crimes, well, bless their hearts. Your old Ford wheezes as you turn the corner, a police car creeping behind you at the speed of a determined tortoise. You remain calm, waving politely as you take the world's slowest illegal detour. Car chases in the 1920s are not what people picture today. There are no screeching tires, no high-speed sirens, no dramatic leaps over ravines. There is only you, a stubborn Ford that shakes like a washer on its last leg, and a deputy whose cruiser sounds like it's powered by disappointment. Every rattle of your engine is a small prayer. Every sputter is a reminder that the Ford was not built for criminal activity, or hills, or temperatures above 72 degrees. Yet here you are, moonshine tucked under the seat, engine gasping for dignity, and a policeman trailing you at a speed even bicyclists could outrun. The road stretches ahead, dusty, sun-baked, lined with lazy pines and the occasional confused chicken. You keep your eyes forward, hands steady on the wheel. The trick is not to look guilty. The moment you look guilty, they start asking questions. But if you wave politely, wave like you're late for choir practice, lawmen melt like butter in a hot pan. You lift your hand, offering a demure ladylike flutter of fingers. The deputy nods, tipping his hat through his windshield as he continues to pursue you at a speed best described as leisurely. Now the car itself is part of your strategy. The Ford is so slow, so asthmatic, that no man or machine could possibly suspect it of wrongdoing. Criminals don't drive cars that make whistling teapot noises when climbing small hills. Criminals don't drive vehicles that require 3 full minutes of pep talk before shifting into second gear. And criminals certainly don't drive cars that backfire like small cannon fire every time they attempt acceleration, except you. You turn onto the back road, the unofficial Moonshiner Expressway, hoping the deputy doesn't follow. But he does. Of course he does. Bless his loyal, misguided heart. He thinks you're simply taking a scenic route. He doesn't realize your trunk holds 2 jars wrapped in crocheted tea towels and tucked neatly beside your emergency pound cake. The chase continues at a thrilling pace of 18 miles per hour. The wind is so gentle it barely ruffles your hair. A dragonfly passes both cars effortlessly. A jogger waves as he overtakes you. You persevere. Let's talk about what's actually happening here. You aren't running. You're lingering aggressively in a forward direction. Moonshiners in the mountains have fast cars, sleek machines modified to outrun trouble. But southern women like you have camouflage by incompetence. If you drive slow enough, everyone assumes you're harmless. If you add a floral hat and a Sunday dress, you could haul an entire distillery in your back seat, and deputies would still ask if you needed help crossing a puddle. As you approach the old bridge, your Ford gives a heroic groan. You pat the dashboard reassuringly. Come on now, sweetheart, we're almost there. The car lurches forward, encouraged by your maternal tone or possibly by gravity. The deputy's cruiser backfires. He winces. You wince. The chickens wince. It is mutually embarrassing for everyone involved. Finally, the road curves around a grove of pecan trees, the perfect blind spot. You seize your chance. You turn down a narrow dirt path and pull behind a fallen log, the Ford wheezing in protest at the abrupt stop. You cut the engine and hold your breath. The deputy's cruiser rolls past your hiding spot at a glacial pace. He stares straight ahead, humming something cheerful and completely unaware that he has just lost the slowest chase in American history. You exhale, smoothing your dress, checking the jars beneath the seat. Everything intact. The Ford, proud in its own exhausted way, emits one last backfire. You pat the steering wheel. Good job. This, you think, is the only car chase in which both vehicles desperately needed a nap. You practice your look in the mirror. Eyes wide, head slightly tilted, voice soft enough to soothe a rabid possum. The moment the sheriff accuses you of anything, you unleash it. He apologizes immediately. Looking innocent isn't just a skill, it's a craft. A calling. An entire performance built upon the sturdy foundations of fluttering eyelashes and well-timed sighs. You lean closer to the mirror, adjusting your expression like an actress fine-tuning her emotional range. Too soft and you seem confused. Too sharp and you seem guilty. But just the right level of bewildered sweetness. That's your ticket to plausible deniability. You tilt your head again and offer the faintest, most heart-tugging smile. This expression has dissolved suspicions, weakened lawman's resolve, and once convinced a federal agent to carry a crate of moonshine inside for you because you shouldn't strain your back, dear. You didn't even have to blink twice. The secret is subtlety. Innocence must float around you like perfume, present, undeniable, yet impossible to pin down. You practice relaxing your shoulders, softening your eyes, and radiating the energy of someone who has never broken a single rule in her life, except maybe that one time she tore a recipe card out of a magazine before paying for it. Your practice is interrupted by the crunch of tires outside. You peek through the curtain and see the sheriff stepping out of his sputtering Ford, wiping his brow with the same hand he uses to sign arrest warrants. You sigh, a deep, dramatic sigh that fills you with patience you do not possess. As he approaches your door, you prepare your performance. You straighten your dress, smooth your hair, assume the posture of someone whose day consists entirely of baking pies and humming hymns, not managing a county-wide distribution network of illegal spirits. He knocks. You wait half a beat before answering, long enough to appear busy, not long enough to appear suspicious. "Afternoon, Sheriff," you say, voice soft and airy, as though you speak exclusively in lullabies. He removes his hat, clutching it like a student about to confess he broke a window. "Ma'am," he says, clearing his throat, I've received reports that you may be involved in some questionable activities." Your eyebrows lift. Delicately. Tragically. The picture of shock. "Me?" you whisper, hand drifting to your chest. "Sheriff, my goodness." His confidence falters instantly. Men are not built for confrontation with emotion, especially soft, trembling emotion wrapped in lace trim. He begins to backpedal before you even finish inhaling. "It's probably nothing," he stammers. "Just you know how folks talk." You nod slowly, letting your lower lip tremble just enough to be convincing but not enough to seem unstable. "People do say the strangest things," you murmur. He apologizes. He always apologizes. "But you aren't done. Innocence is not just about looking harmless. It's about creating an atmosphere in which guilt simply cannot survive." So you offer him lemonade. You ask about his mother's rheumatism. You compliment his tie, even though it looks like something rescued from a church rummage sale. By the time he sits on your porch sipping his drink, his spirit has melted like butter in sunlight. He tells you stories. He tells you his concerns. He nearly tells you his salary. He forgets entirely why he came. Meanwhile, behind the house, cooling jars sit neatly concealed under a quilt embroidered with Bible verses. The still is quiet. The crates are tucked into shadows. No one moves, not even the chickens, who seem to understand the stakes. Eventually, the sheriff stands, tipping his hat as though you've blessed him instead of outmaneuvered him. "Sorry for the trouble, ma'am," he says again. You smile sweetly, gently, innocently. "It's no trouble at all," you reply. And as he walks away, you check your reflection in the window. Expression still perfect. Performance flawless. You really should win an award for this. If only there were a category for Best Actress in a leading illegal operation. You open your grandmother's notebook where recipes are written in cursive so ornate it resembles ancient runes. Every woman in your family contributed something. Technique, measurement, or a very stern warning about blowing up the barn. The notebook lives in a kitchen drawer so stuffed with mismatched ladles and loose nails that no lawman would ever bother opening it. You pull it out gently, as though waking a sleeping ancestor. The leather is worn, softened by decades of flour dust and summer heat. When you open to the first page, the smell of old paper and corn mash rises like a ghost determined to be nostalgic. Your grandmother's handwriting, looping, dramatic, occasionally near illegible, carries weight. These aren't just recipes, these are spells, Rituals, family scripture. You trace your finger along the curls of ink, imagining her hunched over the kitchen table at midnight, writing by lamplight while the still hummed outside like a giant metal cricket. Every generation added something new, a note, a correction, a warning written in all caps. Some pages look like arguments between cousins, measurements crossed out, instructions amended, and once a whole paragraph labelled "Wrong," Martha in red pencil. The notebook is less a collection of recipes and more a multi-generational brawl over the correct mash temperature. Your favourite entry is your great-grandmother's. She wrote with the confidence of a woman who feared neither God nor revenuers. Her recipe begins with, Step 1. Remove the men from the area. And truly that is a cornerstone of the craft. Nothing risks disaster faster than a husband wandering into the barn saying, "Need any help?" You flip to your mother's contribution, a surprisingly delicate sketch of the still's proper assembly, annotated with advice like, "Don't rush the boil, check the coil twice, and do not leave this unattended when your cousin Layla is visiting." You laugh softly, remembering the story behind that one. Let's just say Lila's enthusiasm outpaced her understanding of physics, and a small explosion occurred. Nothing major. The chickens still lay eggs. Mostly. You turn another page. Each scribbled line tells a story of women who learn to survive by transforming corn, sugar, and questionable timing into something clear and potent enough to bring tears to a strong man's eyes. It wasn't just about the liquor, it was about the independence, the ingenuity, the subtle rebellion wrapped in gingham and respectability. Standing in your kitchen, you tap flour from your fingers and read through a recipe you know by heart anyway. Step by step, the instructions unfold like a secret ceremony. Heat the mash, stir with slow circular motions, whisper to the pot if necessary. Your grandmother swore the liquor tasted better if you soothed the boil. Now comes the part where you carefully measure out ingredients, not by cups, not by spoons, but by instinct, generational instinct. Your grandmother didn't believe in standardized measurements. She believed in a generous sprinkle, a cautious pour, and just enough to make the mixture blush. You were 6 years old the first time she let you stir the mash. You remember her telling you, moonshine is like raising children. Too much heat, and it all goes wrong. You carry the notebook outside, the pages fluttering slightly in the breeze, the still gleams in the corner of your yard tucked behind the hydrangeas. You run your hand along its copper flank, feeling the warmth building inside, the hum of alcohol in the making, the hum of your family's legacy. As the steam curls up into the sky, you take one last look at the notebook before tucking it into your apron. It's more than instructions, it's connection, it's identity. It's the reason you know how to hold a poker face when the sheriff appears and how to keep steady hands when pouring from a hot coil. The batch bubbles, you wait. You sip the first clear drops, listening for your grandmother's imagined approval. It's perfect. And if anything ever goes wrong, well, the barn has survived worse. You host a gathering of respectable ladies who play cards, drink tea, and absolutely do not coordinate county-wide distribution schedules. Definitely not. You shuffle the deck. Everyone nods knowingly. The poker club has been meeting every Thursday night for years, long enough that even the most suspicious neighbour dismisses it as nothing more than a group of women enjoying cards and conversation. Which is true, mostly. There are cards. There is conversation. There is also a map hidden beneath the lace tablecloth, and a handwritten list of delivery dates tucked inside the sugar bowl. Tonight, like every Thursday, the ladies arrive in waves. First comes Miss Ruby May, wearing perfume strong enough to be considered a form of communication. Then Mrs. Davenport carrying a tin of cookies that no one ever eats because they are always strangely heavy. And finally, the Wainwright sisters, who walk in with the synchronized steps of women who could smuggle contraband through a military checkpoint without breaking a sweat. You greet each of them warmly, your living room glowing under soft lamplight. The table is already set, cards stacked neatly, tea steaming in delicate porcelain cups, and the innocent snacks arranged like decorative decoys. The air smells faintly of lavender, cinnamon, and the unspoken agreement that nothing said here will ever leave the room. The game begins the same way it always does, with small talk. Weather, children, the pastor's increasingly dramatic sermons. But beneath every polite comment lies another layer of communication, the kind that floats just under the surface like a dangerous fish in calm water. "How's your garden?" Mrs. Davenport asks. You place a card on the table. "Blooming beautifully. Should be ready for a big harvest this weekend." Translation: the next batch will be finished by Sunday. Ruby May sips her tea. "And how's your cousin up in the next county? Haven't heard from him recently." You deal her another card. "Over, he's staying busy." Translation: lawmen are sniffing around. Keep your heads down. No one says anything explicit. Women of your generation were raised to speak in code whether they wanted to or not. By the time a full hand of cards is dealt, the entire county's supply chain has been reviewed, adjusted, and optimized without a single dangerous word spoken aloud. The poker game itself is almost secondary, though it serves its own purpose. Winning isn't about the pot. It's about signaling confidence. Losing is a reminder that even good plans require humility. Bluffing. Bluffing is practically a rehearsal for dealing with deputies. Tonight, the stakes escalate when the Wainwright sisters begin whispering about a deputy who's been circling the roads near their property. The table goes quiet, not fearful, just calculating. You take a thoughtful sip of tea. It's the kind of silence filled with strategy, not worry. "Well," you say finally, placing a card down. "Perhaps he should receive a little distraction." The ladies nod. Strategies bloom around the table like wildflowers. Someone will stage a commotion at the general store. Someone else will lure the deputy into a conversation about his mother's quilting habits. The Wainwrights will reroute their deliveries through your cousin's pasture. All of this is communicated through half-sentences, eyebrow raises, and the occasional pointed rearranging of the cookie tin. As the night drifts on, laughter bubbles up. Real laughter, not coded, not strategic. Women leaning back in their chairs, hands over their mouths, enjoying their one night free of husbands, chores, and expectations. The poker club isn't just a cover, it's a sanctuary. A place where women who run half the county's illegal nightlife can finally sit down and enjoy themselves. When the final hand is played, Ruby May wins, again, and everyone groans good-naturedly. You gather the cards while Mrs. Davenport helps pour fresh tea. The map is folded, the schedules tucked away, the heavy cookie tin returned to its owner. The women say their goodbyes and vanish into the warm southern night, each heading home with a smile and a secret. Anyone watching would see only respectable ladies enjoying a wholesome evening of fellowship. And that's exactly why the poker club works so well, because nothing terrifies lawmen more than the idea that women are simply being friendly. You hand the deputy a pie. You mention that you hope he doesn't check the old barn today because the roof might fall in. He accepts the pie, avoids the barn, and remains blissfully unaware he has prevented a federal offence. Southern bribery is an art form, not crass, not crude, just a polite exchange of favours wrapped in layers of plausible deniability and cooled on a windowsill. You cannot simply hand a deputy money. That would be improper, but handing him a pie, a warm, golden-crusted, cinnamon-scented pie, that's not bribery. That's hospitality with strategic undertones. You choose your baked goods carefully. Apple pie for the deputy with a suspicious streak. Pecan pie for the one who believes everything is God's will, including dessert. Chess pie for the young deputy who has a crush on you but is far too polite to admit it. Each pie is a conversation, a persuasion tool, a coded message delivered through sugar and butter. This particular deputy, Deputy Harlan, is a man easily swayed by baked goods and gentle warnings. He shows up in your yard like a well-meaning Labrador, cheerful, attentive, and entirely incapable of detecting subtle wrongdoing. His boots crunch across the gravel and he tips his hat with more enthusiasm than precision. "Morning, Ma'am," he says, eyes drifting to the pie in your hands as though it were a religious experience. You smile sweetly. "Deputy Harlan, I baked too much today. Thought you might help me out." He beams. Lawmen in this county may be trained to detect crime, but none of them are trained to refuse pie. As he accepts the dish, cradling it like a newborn, you drop the line. "I just hope you don't go near the old barn today," you murmur, lowering your voice as though sharing a fragile secret. The roof might fall in. His eyebrows shoot up. "Fall in?" "Yes," you sigh. "Terrible shape. Wouldn't want you getting hurt." He instantly straightens his posture, sombre with the weight of imagined danger. "Of course, Ma'am. I'll steer clear." And there it is. Not a bribe, just concern, mutual respect, and the transference of a problem from your conscience to a dessert. Behind you, the old barn, far from collapsing, holds 2 full crates of moonshine sitting proudly on shelves you reinforced last summer. The barn is structurally sound enough to withstand a stampede, a tornado, and your cousin's enthusiastic dancing. The only thing at risk inside is your freedom. But Deputy Harlan doesn't know that. He takes the pie, promises to pray for your barn's recovery, and makes his way down the path whistling a hymn. You watch him go, relieved but unsurprised. This is exactly how Southern bribery works, a blend of charity, caution, and sugar. Let's talk about the psychology behind it. Deputies are like raccoons, easily distracted by shiny objects, and even more easily distracted by food. If you give them something to hold, their investigative instincts shut down. A man with a hot pie in his hands does not kick open barn doors. He does not ask pointed questions. He does not follow up on unusual smoke coming from back windows. He goes home. He finds a fork. He forgets why he left the station in the first place. This method is not new. Women in your family have been using pastry-based diplomacy for generations. Your grandmother once prevented a full-scale raid with nothing more than a lemon meringue and a trembling whisper about delicate household repairs. The men left immediately. No officer wants to knock down a door only to discover he interrupted a private domestic situation involving plaster dust and emotions. Your pie bribery system isn't foolproof, but it's dangerously close. You keep a rotation of pies on standby, each one ready for deployment. You can bake on instinct now, assembling crusts with the confidence of a woman whose continued freedom depends on achieving the perfect golden brown. Later that afternoon, when the deliveries are done and the moonshine safely transported, you lean against the barn door and sigh with satisfaction. The barn did not fall in. Deputy Harlan did not investigate. And your reputation as a generous community baker remained spotless. You didn't lie. You didn't bribe. You simply used Southern etiquette to its fullest strategic potential. And if the federal government can't appreciate that level of charm and ingenuity, well, bless their hearts. The deputies barge in. You offer them lemonade. They apologize. They leave. They do not notice that the piano bench is hollow and currently contains 12 jars of highly flammable evidence. Raids are an inevitable part of moonshine life, like thunderstorms, taxes, or relatives who show up unannounced and stay too long. You've learned not to panic when boots hit your porch with urgency. Instead, you straighten your dress, smooth your hair, and assume the serene expression of a woman whose biggest concern is whether her roses need pruning. This unnerves the men far more than fear ever could. Today the deputies come pounding up your steps with wild eyes and an energy that suggests someone just told them the word operation. You open the door and greet them as though you've been expecting company for iced drinks on a summer afternoon. "Mum, we have a warrant," one of them says, holding a piece of paper like it personally betrayed him. "Of course," you say sweetly, stepping aside. "Come in. Lemonade?" They hesitate. They always hesitate. Something about being offered refreshments the moment they attempt law enforcement makes them question their decisions. Still, they accept, because no southern man can refuse lemonade. It's a reflex. As you hand out glasses, the deputies start their search. You watch them with polite interest, sipping your own drink in slow, delicate motions. They lift cushions, poke at shelves, and open drawers with the caution of men who secretly hope they find nothing, because paperwork is exhausting. Meanwhile, the piano bench sits in the corner, prim and polished, silently holding 12 jars that could turn the whole house into a cautionary tale. The deputies glance at it briefly but move on. Every man in this county fears two things: women's laundry and women's pianos. They will not risk upsetting either. Deputy Collins clears his throat. "Ma'am, have you seen any unusual activity in the area?" You place a hand delicately on your chest. "Unusual? Oh dear, I've been so busy baking today. I wouldn't have noticed if the entire state legislature marched through my yard. This is not a lie. When the still is bubbling, and the jars are cooling, and the deliveries are scheduled, you might miss the second coming of Julius Caesar, but it sounds innocent enough to make Collins nod sympathetically." They move through the kitchen next, where you've arranged everything to look aggressively normal. Flour dusted on the counter, a cooling pie, a half-finished quilt draped over a chair. No man alive can decipher whether a quilt is finished, so this adds a layer of confusion that buys you time. "Mind if we look out back?" another deputy asks. You widen your eyes in immediate concern. "Of course, but do watch your step. The chickens have been a touch unpredictable today." Unpredictable is an understatement. One rooster in particular has a personal vendetta against shiny boots. The deputies exit the door cautiously, walking sideways like crabs as they attempt to avoid poultry confrontation. You allow yourself a small smile as they wander toward the garden, completely ignoring the shed that actually contains your backup coil and the remnants of last week's batch. Inside, you stroll to the piano bench and gently place a hand on it. Your heart thuds, but your face stays neutral. Women throughout history have perfected the art of looking calm while dying internally. You hum an off-key tune as you arrange doilies on a side table, projecting a domestic serenity so powerful it should count as theatre. After several minutes of rummaging, the deputies return, dusty, sweaty, and empty-handed. They apologise again. "Sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am." "Oh, no trouble at all," you say, offering them one more cookie for the road. They take 2 each. As they leave, you close the door, flip the lock, and lean against it with a long, controlled exhale. The house is still. The jars remain safely hidden. The piano looks innocent enough to be featured on a Christmas card. You lift the lid, peek inside, and whisper, "You behaved beautifully." One day, you think, these men will learn to check the obvious places, but hopefully not too soon. You gently remind the sheriff that your husband once fixed his mother's roof, and it would be a shame if a stray rumour about his card-playing habits surfaced. You smile. He understands. Southern threats are a unique breed, soft, sweet, and delivered with enough sugar to rot the teeth of a grown ox. They never sound like threats. They sound like thoughtful observations, neighbourhood updates, weather reports, or gentle concerns for the well-being of others. But underneath every word lies an iron-clad message. Don't try me. You were raised on these threats. You heard them at church potlucks, beauty parlours, and family reunions. As a child, you once watched your grandmother say, "Bless your heart, Earl. You always were clumsy." and then quietly imply she could ruin his entire social life if he didn't stop stepping on her begonias. Earl apologized to the begonias. Your skill with polite threats has only improved with age. Now standing on your porch with the sheriff shifting uncomfortably on the bottom step, you harness that talent. You tilt your head, you clasp your hands in front of you, you smile like the very picture of God-fearing innocence. And then, softly, sweetly, you deliver the sentence that makes him stiffen like a baptized cat. Sheriff. I'd feel just terrible if folks got the wrong idea about you and those Friday night card games. You don't accuse him. You don't even imply wrongdoing. You simply allow the idea to waft gently into the air like the scent of warm biscuits. He fills in the rest himself. His eyes widen. Now, ma'am, I don't believe that'll be necessary. Of course not, you say, old honey. We're all just trying to keep peace in the county, same as always. He nods quickly, the kind of nod a man gives when he has suddenly remembered he left something cooking on the stove. The sheriff has dealt with dangerous men in the mountains, but none of them scare him as much as a southern woman with leverage. Let's talk about the mechanics of polite threats. It's a delicate recipe, honed over generations. Step 1. Start with a compliment. Something flattering, even if it is wildly untrue. Step 2. Add a personal connection, family, favours, anecdotes about roofs being fixed. Step 3. Slip in the threat so gently it doesn't feel like a threat, more like a mutual understanding between civilized people. Step 4. Finish with another compliment or a blessing. This is vital. It softens the impact while cementing the message. Your mother must be so proud of you, you add lightly, what with all the attention you've been giving the community lately. Translation. Stop sniffing around my barn, or I will drop hints so devastating at the beauty parlour that your reputation will become a cautionary tale. The sheriff swallows hard. He begins to mutter something about misunderstanding, miscommunication, misplaced concerns. You nod sympathetically as though he's confiding deep emotional secrets and not trying to avoid becoming a punchline at the weekly quilting circle. In truth, you bear him no ill will. He's only doing his job. But you're doing yours too. Survival in the Prohibition era isn't only about hiding stills, bribing deputies, and outrunning Ford engines that top out at the speed of an ambitious mule. It's about social manoeuvring. It's about understanding the clandestine power of etiquette. The sheriff starts backing away, hat in hand, as though your porch is sacred ground. I appreciate your hospitality, he murmurs. You place a hand over your heart. Always, Sheriff. He nearly trips over his own feet getting back to his car. Once he's gone, you turn and head inside, shutting the screen door with a soft creak. The house is quiet, save for the faint bubbling of your still in the shed and the clinking of cooling jars. You didn't threaten him. Not really. You simply reminded him of the social ecosystem he lives in, and if that's intimidating, well, around here that's just good manners. You stroll through the fairgrounds with a basket of pies, each one containing a false bottom full of jars. Everyone assumes you're participating in the bake-off. You win third place and sell 14 bottles before noon. The county fair is the closest thing your town has to international diplomacy. Families arrive in flocks. Judging contests are taken more seriously than federal elections, and the smell of fried dough hangs thick enough to moisturize your skin. Children run wild. Chickens look confused. Young men try to impress young women by winning stuffed animals that will later haunt the backs of their closets. You move through the chaos gracefully, your floral dress swaying, your pie basket bouncing gently with every step. No one suspects that beneath each pink-tinged crust lies a Moonshine distribution centre, more efficient than the post office. If law enforcement had any sense, they'd inspect the baked goods, but these men fear pies the way they fear emotions, deeply and without explanation. You set up your little table beside the sewing tent, right between Mrs. Cottingham's blueberry muffins and the 4-H goat show. The air smells like kettle corn, cow hay, and ambition. You arrange your pies carefully, apple on the left, pecan on the right, chess pie up front since it always charms judges. Beneath each pie tin lies a smooth wooden false bottom, under which delicate clinks of glass are muffled by blankets of cinnamon and sugar. When judging begins, you stand with the other respectable women, hands folded politely. The judges slice, sniff, murmur. They praise the flaky crust but critique your lattice work. You nod solemnly, as though this isn't simply camouflage for your side business, and accept your third-place ribbon with the quiet dignity of a woman who already made more money today than the baking competition will award in 10 years. Then the real work begins. Using a system more complex than the telegraph, your customers arrive in subtle waves. Some buy a slice of pie, casually tapping the tin twice, the signal that they prefer jar delivery. Others comment loudly about the weather we've been having, which depending on tone means they want 1 bottle, 2, or a discreet refill of last month's order. You slip jars from beneath the table with the kind of fluid precision that would impress professional magicians. Meanwhile, the sheriff patrols the grounds with puffed-up authority, scanning the crowds for lawlessness. Children steal funnel cakes right under his nose, a goat escapes its pen and squares off with a toddler, but the sheriff is focused entirely on pie-related crime, convinced the bake-off is where scandal truly lives. He never once approaches your table. That third-place ribbon works like garlic against vampires. Around noon, things get interesting. Deputy Harlan, pie lover, easy mark, and consistent obstacle to law enforcement everywhere, approaches your booth. You tense just a bit. Not fear, anticipation. The deputy's presence always indicates that the sheriff has begun forming a theory. Fortunately, the deputy's presence also guarantees that theory will crumble like shortbread. "Ma'am," he says, removing his hat reverently as he gazes at your pies. "These look divine." You smile warmly. "Care for a slice, deputy?" He nods, choosing the pecan. "Good." The pecan pie has the deepest false bottom. As he lifts his fork, his eyes widen. This is incredible. You thank him sweetly, using the moment of bliss to nudge a jar toward Mrs. Carter, who expertly tucks it into her knitting bag without missing a stitch. Deputy Harlan finishes his slice, compliments your spices, buys a whole pie, and wanders off into the fairgrounds singing your praises to anyone who will listen, which is half the county. The sheriff, hearing this, assumes you are a model citizen and leaves you entirely alone. By the time the afternoon sun turns golden, your basket is empty, of jars, not pies, and your pockets are full. You pack your table, wave to the judges, politely admire the blue ribbon winner's crust, and stroll toward home with the same calm dignity you brought with you. You didn't win first place at the fair, but you absolutely won the day. Steam erupts from your barn like the wrath of a caffeinated dragon. You calmly place a kettle in your hands and say, "Just testing new canning techniques," as the sheriff drives by, confused by your commitment to agriculture. Stills don't break often, but when they do, they choose the worst possible moment. Usually when the sheriff is within sight, the wind is blowing directly toward the road, and you're wearing your nicest dress. This morning is no exception. You had just begun heating a fresh batch when something inside the coil made a sound like a disgruntled raccoon being woken too early. Then came the hiss, then came the roar, and suddenly your barn was belching steam thick enough to qualify as weather. You freeze for a moment, listening to the bubbling panic inside the still. The barn's wooden beams creak. A chicken wanders past, unfazed by the impending explosion. You consider panicking. But panic is loud. Panic draws attention. Panic is for men who spill coffee on official documents. Instead, you take a deep breath, grab the nearest kettle, and channel the serenity of a woman who has absolutely nothing to hide except a malfunctioning illegal distillation apparatus currently impersonating a volcanic event. You step outside just as the sheriff sputtering Ford rounds the bend. Of course he's early today. He's never early for anything except moments that could ruin your morning. The plume of steam drifts lazily upward, shimmering in the sunlight like a heavenly sign warning angels of paperwork. The sheriff slows his car, suspicion spreading across his face like butter on a warm biscuit. You wave, calm, friendly, utterly unbothered by the supernatural steam rising behind you. "Morning, Sheriff," you call cheerfully. He squints. "Everything all right back there?" "Oh yes," you say, lifting the kettle as though performing in a homemaker's pageant. "Just testing some new canning techniques." Canning techniques, as everyone in the South knows, can involve heat, jars, pressure, and occasionally screaming. This makes them the perfect cover for nearly anything, including industrial-grade steam clouds. People who don't understand canning. The sheriff most certainly does not can. He nods slowly, trying to decide if this explanation fits into his understanding of domestic life. Spoiler, it does not. But his imagination supplies an image of you bravely preserving peaches under extreme conditions, and he seems satisfied. "All right then," he says, tipping his hat. "Just checking." He drives on, leaving you standing with a kettle and a prayer, both of which are now sweating profusely. The moment he disappears, you exhale so hard you nearly topple a row of tomato plants. You race back into the barn, where the still continues to hiss with the emotional energy of a tired teapot. Steam curls around the rafters, making the whole place smell like warm copper and regret. You throw open the windows, you fan the air with your apron, you whisper urgent pleadings to the machinery like a woman trying to convince a dog not to throw up on the rug. Gradually, mercifully, the pressure begins to drop. The steam thins. The angry hiss fades to a tired gurgle. You inspect the damage. A loose clamp, a warped pipe. Nothing fatal, but enough to give you a new streak of grey hair. You tighten the fittings with practiced hands, muttering about cousins who promised they'd fix this soon, but whose definition of soon appears to span multiple geological eras. When the danger passes, you collapse onto a hay bale, laughing softly in disbelief. The still, now quiet, sits innocently in the corner, like a naughty child pretending to nap after wreaking havoc. Later, when the sun dips low and the barn smells normal again, you patch up the coil, wipe the condensation from every surface, and rehearse your new emergency cover story. Perhaps something involving an over-enthusiastic bread recipe, or unusually violent soap making. Because in this life, equipment fails, lawmen wander too close, steam erupts, but as long as you can hold a kettle and smile, you'll be just fine. A car crunches into your driveway. Without thinking, you fling a quilt over the still, kick a crate onto the porch and adopt your "why, I do declare" face. Just as the mailman innocently hands you a catalogue, you don't panic. Panic is loud, sloppy, and unbecoming. What you do is activate. Your body moves with the muscle memory of a woman who has had far too many close calls with government employees. In a single motion that would impress professional acrobats, you swoop across the yard, toss a quilt over a suspicious copper object, slide a jar behind a flower pot, and assume a posture of gentle bewilderment, as though you had absolutely no idea heavy machinery existed, let alone what it might be doing behind your barn. Unexpected visitors are the natural predators of moonshiners, nosy neighbours, overeager deputies, lost salesmen, that cousin who always appears at the exact moment you're committing a felony. You've developed an entire emergency protocol for these moments, a personal playbook passed down, verbally and dramatically, by the women in your family for generations. Step 1. Hide the evidence. This includes jars, tools, coils, suspicious buckets, barrels that smell too strongly of fermentation, and any cousin who may be lingering nearby looking guilty. Step 2. Replace the evidence with domestic distractions, laundry baskets, quilts, potted plants, a strategically placed casserole, if necessary, a child. Step 3. Transform into your decoy persona. You soften your eyes, tilt your head, become the very image of gentility wrapped in gingham. The kind of woman whose biggest secret is that she bought margarine instead of butter. This transformation happens in seconds as you hurry toward the driveway, smoothing your dress while preparing to greet whoever has arrived with absolutely no suspicion whatsoever. Today, it's the mailman, poor soul, not knowing he nearly stumbled into a moonshine eruption. His truck rattles like a pocket full of coins as he steps out and waves. "Mornin', ma'am," he says pleasantly, holding out a thick catalogue full of fancy household goods no one in town has ever purchased. You widen your eyes just a bit, your signature move. "Why, thank you kindly," you breathe as though receiving a mail order catalogue is the cultural equivalent of being knighted. He nods politely, tipping his cap. "Didn't mean to startle you." "Oh, you didn't startle me," you say sweetly, standing directly in front of the very quilt hiding your still. "I'm always delighted to see the mail." Behind you, a puff of steam escapes from beneath the quilt. You shift your body to block his view. He notices nothing. This is the power of Southern courtesy. It blinds men completely. He hands you the catalogue, unaware that this simple delivery nearly triggered a county-wide incident report. You flip casually through the pages, pretending to admire lampshades and furniture you have no intention of buying, just to maintain appearances. Then he asks the worst possible question. "Anything you need me to pick up?" You smile, a real smile, one forged from the knowledge that you came dangerously close to handing him a crate of moonshine by accident. "No thank you, dear," you say. "Everything's taken care of today." He nods, satisfied, climbs back into his rattling mail truck, and drives away, leaving you standing in your yard with a catalogue you will absolutely never open again. As soon as he disappears down the road, your spine unfreezes. You dart back to the porch, retrieve the crate you kicked earlier, and whisper an apology to the jars inside. Then you lift the quilt off the still, which makes an indignant metallic sound, as if offended at being treated like a piece of furniture. You pat it lovingly. "Hush now. We survived. Unexpected visitors will always be a hazard, but as long as your reflexes stay sharp and your why, I do declare face stays convincing. You'll outlive every mailman, salesman, deputy and nosy neighbour in the county, and probably win an award for grace under criminal pressure." You slip down the dirt road after sunset, moonlight glinting off the jars in your basket. The fireflies blink conspiratorially, as though cheering you on in your quest to remain both polite and criminal. Night is your favourite accomplice. Darkness stretches around you like a soft quilt, stitched with stars and scented faintly of honeysuckle and adventure. The dirt road crunches under your shoes with every careful step. You walk slowly, not for stealth, but to keep the jars from clinking. The sound of moonshine glass on glass is louder than a church scandal and carries just as far. The air is warm, thick, and humming with summer sounds. Crickets trill their approval. Tree frogs add their syncopated commentary. A gentle breeze stirs the pines on either side of the road, sending needles whispering secrets into the night. You feel calm, in charge, slightly ridiculous, but pleasantly so. The fireflies are out tonight in full force, tiny lanterns floating through the dark, greeting you like old friends. They bob around your shoulders, illuminating your path with the tender enthusiasm of unpaid interns. They don't judge, they don't question, they blink encouragement. "Go on, Queen, commit your felonies." You shift the basket on your arm. It's filled with tonight's shipment, jars wrapped in soft cloth, tucked between loaves of bread you baked as decoys. Anyone looking into the basket would see wholesome carbohydrates. Anyone lifting a loaf would develop sudden suspicion, upper arm strain, and possibly a new respect for your commitment to distribution. As you continue down the road, you pass the old Johnson farm, now silent except for the restless cattle in the distance. Rumour has it the Johnson boys once tried night smuggling on horseback, which ended with 4 broken jars and 1 very upset mare. You took notes. Horses are majestic but unreliable co-workers. You prefer walking. Walking is quiet. Walking is steady. Walking allows you to greet the moon like an old acquaintance who knows all your secrets and agrees not to tell. Up ahead, the road curves by the pond, an area with notoriously nosy bullfrogs. You swear they croak louder whenever you're carrying contraband. You step lightly, offering a silent prayer that the frogs won't alert anyone. They croak anyway, loudly, judgmentally. But there are no deputies hiding in the cattails, so you carry on. Let's talk about the dangers of nighttime smuggling. Not the dramatic dangers you see in movies, just the real ones. Holes in the road, low-hanging branches, the occasional overexcited raccoon. And of course, neighbours who sit on their porches just getting some air at 10:30 p.m, wearing nightgowns and holding more curiosity than is safe for either of you. You see Mrs. Aldridge rocking on her porch as you pass her house. Her nightgown glows faintly in the moonlight, giving her the appearance of a friendly ghost who minds everybody's business. You wave politely. She waves back, her eyes narrowing slightly at the sight of your basket. You give her the just delivering bread smile. She nods. Good. She loves bread. She also loves gossip, but tonight she chooses carbs. Finally you reach your destination, an old smokehouse tucked behind a cluster of trees. The door creaks as you open it, because of course it does, and you slip inside. The air smells of cured meat and secrecy. You place the jars gently onto a waiting shelf, each one landing with the satisfaction of a job well done. You pause for a moment, letting the silence wrap around you. Out here, with fireflies flickering through the cracks in the boards and the woods murmuring softly, the world feels peaceful, even righteous, like maybe you're doing more than running Moonshine. Maybe you're preserving tradition, community, and the right to have a little joy in a very strange decade. Then you turn back down the road, basket empty, steps lighter. The fireflies follow you home, blinking their approval, and if anyone asks why you were out walking so late, you'll simply say you couldn't sleep, which is true. You're very busy. You sit on the porch with your daughter, explaining the family values, kindness, honesty, and how to hide liquor under a loaf of cornbread. She nods, absorbing the wisdom of her foremothers. The porch is quiet tonight, bathed in the soft glow of lantern light. Crickets chirp in the tall grass, and the warm scent of pine drifts lazily from the trees. Your daughter sits beside you, legs swinging like she's keeping time with the night. She's at that age where curiosity is unstoppable, where children ask questions like, why is the sky blue? And why does the sheriff visit so often? And why do we keep jars in places jars don't normally go? So here you are, passing along the important lessons. You start with kindness, the cornerstone of Southern womanhood. We treat everyone with respect, you say, smoothing her hair, even when they're difficult. She nods, thoughtful. She's seen you greet deputies you should, by all moral logic, despise. She's watched you offer sweet tea to men who would arrest you if they had 2 more working brain cells. She understands kindness as strategy, soft, powerful, and occasionally weaponized. Next comes honesty. You choose your words carefully. We tell the truth, you say, just not always the whole truth. Her brow furrows. Like when Mrs. Aldridge asked if we'd seen anything strange and you said you saw a squirrel steal a tomato. You smile, a proud smile. She's learning. Exactly. That was strange. It just wasn't the strange thing she meant. She absorbs this with quiet reverence. Children in your family always have an early talent for moral nuance. Finally, you come to the third pillar, the art of concealment. You lean in conspiratorially. Now, about hiding liquor, you say, lowering your voice as though the azalea bushes themselves might be listening. You gotta put it somewhere no deputy would dare to look. She considers this. Like under a cornbread loaf? Yes, you say, patting her knee. Under, inside, or beside. Cornbread is versatile. You guide her through the advanced curriculum, hollowed-out books, false bottoms in sewing baskets, decorative tins labelled buttons, the legendary trick involving a casserole that rattles ominously but smells like cheese. She listens with the solemn intensity of an apprentice learning the secrets of a sacred calling. Then comes the hands-on demonstration. You hand her a small jar, empty for safety, and a fresh loaf of still warm cornbread. Show me where you'd hide it. Without hesitation, she lifts the loaf, tucks the jar underneath, and repositions the bread so neatly it could pass inspection at a church bake sale. You blink. She beams. This is what pride feels like. You're a natural, you whisper. She glows under the praise. Children love approval. Children of moonshiners love efficiency. As the night deepens, she asks questions. Important ones. Why do we do this? Why don't we just buy things at the store? You explain gently that the store does not sell the kind of items people actually want. Not during Prohibition. Not in this economy. Not when men in Washington think they know better than women in kitchens. She nods again, her face illuminated by understanding and porch lantern light. She's seeing the world differently now, not just as a place of rules, but as a place of workarounds. The porch swing creaks softly as you rock together. Above you, the stars shine, the same stars that once watched your grandmother sneak jars into her apron pockets, the same stars that watched your mother practice her innocent face in the mirror. A whole lineage of clever, stubborn, resourceful women whose legacy lives in you and now in the small girl at your side. She leans her head on your shoulder. Mama, she murmurs sleepily, when I grow up, can I run the operation? You smile, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. If the world still needs it, you say gently. She drifts towards sleep, dreaming of cornbread and secrets, and you sit there, listening to the cicadas, proud of your daughter. Proud and slightly afraid of what she'll be capable of by age 12. You tie your apron around your waist, smoothing the fabric like the picture of domestic bliss. The pearls around your neck glint softly in the morning sun, projecting innocence so aggressively it's practically a weapon. Underneath the apron, however, lies an arrangement of flasks so carefully balanced that one wrong sneeze could turn you into a human wind chime. But no one suspects a woman whose clothes match the curtains. That's the power of southern camouflage. Hide in plain sight by looking busy, smelling like cornbread, and pretending you don't know what federal jurisdiction means. Camouflage, in your world, has nothing to do with leaves or mud or those strange hunting outfits men wear that make them look like confused shrubbery. No, southern camouflage is psychological. It's weaponized domesticity. It's the art of appearing so harmless, so preoccupied with pie crust and laundry starch, that no deputy alive could fathom you running an operation that rivals most small businesses. Your apron is essential to this illusion. Crisp, clean, embroidered with little flowers that imply your hobbies include quilting and humming hymns. No one ever suspects it doubles as a tactical concealment device. You adjust the straps, feeling the familiar weight of the hidden flasks settle against your waist like loyal, mildly dangerous companions. The pearls are equally important. There's something about pearls that short-circuits male suspicion. A woman wearing pearls does not in their minds have the time or inclination to break federal law. Pearls say refinement. Pearls say innocence. Pearls say I have a monogrammed handkerchief and firm opinions about centerpieces. Pearls do not say I'm smuggling enough liquor on my person to intoxicate a barn dance. That's why they work. You step into your kitchen, where sunlight filters through lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the floor. The room smells of cornbread and ambition. A pot simmers gently on the stove, not because you're cooking anything important, but because simmering pots create the perfect ambience of occupied innocence. Anyone walking in would see a woman up to her elbows in domestic chores. They would not see the blueprint of a distribution route tucked under the butter dish. As you move about the room, the hidden flasks clink ever so slightly. You pause, adjust your posture, then resume your tasks with the serene grace of someone who cannot possibly be part of an illicit enterprise. You whisk batter, you wipe counters, you hum a tune that sounds vaguely like Amazing Grace but is actually the rhythm you use to remember delivery schedules. Then comes the real test. Interacting with men who have no idea they're dealing with the most capable criminal in 3 counties. Deputy Harlan knocks on your door, shy as ever. He claims he's here on routine patrol, but everyone knows he's here because he hopes you'll offer him pie. You greet him with a warm smile and absolutely no sudden movements. One wrong shift could send the flasks chiming like church bells. "Morning, Deputy," you say sweetly, leaning lightly against the doorframe in the one safe position available to you. He tips his hat, glancing nervously at your apron. Not because he suspects anything, but because men fear aprons. Aprons imply chores, and chores imply involvement they'd prefer to avoid. That, new recipe you mentioned, did you try it yet? He asks, eyes hopeful. You nod, pointing vaguely toward the kitchen, where a very real pie cools on the windowsill. Distraction pies, they work every time. Deputy Harlan wanders inside, praising the aroma, blissfully unaware that you're inches away from emitting the sound of 12 flasks colliding. You walk carefully, offering him a seat. He accepts without noticing how rigidly you lower yourself into your chair, legs positioned at angles that would impress ballet dancers. He thanks you for the pie. You thank him for stopping by. He leaves, none the wiser, humming contentedly. Once he's gone, you gently lift the apron away from your body, exhaling in relief as the flasks settle safely into silence. You hang the apron on its hook. You unclasp the pearls, placing them neatly in a dish. And you smile to yourself, knowing that camouflage of this caliber isn't taught in schools. It's inherited, perfected, practiced daily. And if the government ever figures out how powerful a woman in pearls truly is, well, bless their hearts. The postman strolls up the path, whistling a tune that suggests he absolutely does not notice the crate-shaped outline beneath your porch steps. He hands over your mail, circulars, catalogues, and a letter from your cousin announcing yet another revival meeting, but pauses with a knowing look. You hand him a jar of peach preserves. He nods politely, pockets it discreetly, and continues whistling. Some say ignorance is bliss. Your postman knows better. Ignorance is job security, and peach preserves are a universal language. Your postman, Mr. Willoughby, is a man of refined instincts and carefully curated obliviousness. He has seen things. Oh, he will never admit it, but he has absolutely seen things. A woman hauling suspicious sacks at dawn. A deputy skulking behind azalea bushes. A rooster attacking a man in uniform. He has witnessed enough chaos on his route to understand one fundamental rule of rural survival. Do not ask questions you do not want the answers to. This morning he walks up your path with his usual casual stride, his leather mailbag swinging gently at his side. The sun is already warm. The cicadas are already loud. He tips his cap as you open the door, projecting the calm confidence of a man who has mastered the art of minding his own business. "Morning, ma'am," he says, handing you the stack of mail. You scan it, catalogues, advertisements. A sternly worded letter reminding you to renew your subscription to the Ladies' Gardening Society newsletter. And of course, your cousin Clara's latest announcement about the revival tent she's currently dragging across 3 counties. Clara runs on spiritual enthusiasm, and you strongly suspect a small amount of your product. But Mr. Willoughby doesn't leave. Not yet. He stands there on your porch, lifting his gaze just slightly toward the porch steps, where the faint corner of a crate peeks through the slats like a bashful accomplice. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't raise an eyebrow. He doesn't shift his posture in a single revealing way. He simply exists in the moment, a quiet witness, a custodian of silence, a man whose pension depends on staying blissfully, strategically uninformed. You reward this professionalism with a jar. "Here," you say lightly, handing him the glass container you've labelled peach preserves. From last summer's harvest. The jar gleams in the morning light, the contents swirling just a little too clearly to be fruit-based. He accepts it with both hands, as reverent as a parishioner receiving communion. "Well, now," he says with a soft smile, tucking it into his coat pocket in one smooth motion. "Much obliged." The exchange is elegant, polite, practically ceremonial. The postman doesn't drink on the job, he's far too decent for that. But he will, without fail, place that jar on a high shelf in his kitchen, waiting for the precise moment his wife burns her casserole again, or the church choir committee puts him on the snack rotation without warning. Preserves can solve many problems. Let's talk about the power of a good postal worker. They are the first to know when new lawmen arrive in town, the first to deliver notices, the first to overhear gossip whispered through screen doors. They are, effectively, the information network of rural America, and if you can make your postman smile, really smile, you have built a gentle, unspoken alliance that no sheriff can fully untangle. Today, as he turns to leave, he pauses, just long enough to ensure you understand that he didn't see the crate and didn't notice the fresh wagon tracks in the dirt, and absolutely did not hear the faint metallic clinking beneath your floorboards. Then he gives you a small nod. Respectful, mutual, meaningful. He strolls back down the path, whistling that same cheerful tune. Some people whistle because they're happy. Your postman whistles because it helps him pretend he doesn't see felonies before breakfast. And truly, everyone should have a hobby. Your kitchen becomes a laboratory after dark. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg. Ingredients that to the untrained eye look like you're preparing an early holiday pie. In reality, you're crafting flavour profiles so sophisticated even a seasoned agent couldn't identify your batch. You stir the pot slowly, savouring the smell of warm spice and mild rebellion. Your grandmother taught you this method, whispering that no judge in the world would convict a woman whose product tastes like Christmas. It's a strategy as old as Appalachian hills. If the law can't categorise your crime, they certainly can't prosecute it. Midnight is your favourite hour for distilling. The house is quiet, the world is still, and the moon hangs low in the sky like a silent conspirator. Your kitchen lantern flickers just enough to make everything feel deliciously illicit. Flour dust and steam swirl together in the warm air, dancing like mischievous spirits. The stove emits a soft hum, steady, reassuring, like it knows exactly what it's a part of. You gather your spices, each one meticulously stored in labelled tins. To the sheriff, these tins would look like the armoury of a woman preparing for holiday baking season. To you, they are tools of strategic misdirection. Nutmeg masks sharp edges. Cinnamon adds body. Clove softens the bite. Vanilla extract hides the telltale scent of high-proof alcohol, like a velvet curtain drawn over a rowdy stage show. Tonight, you're perfecting a blend your grandmother invented back when revenuers were nosier, and women were even more underestimated. She called it Santa's helper, which was both adorable and dangerously misleading. 1 sip brought warmth to the bones, 2 sips brought truth-telling, 3 sips put a grown man under the table so quickly he'd swear he'd been mugged by a gingerbread house. You stir the mixture with the slow, hypnotic rhythm your grandmother taught you. Clockwise 3 times, counterclockwise twice, tap the spoon for luck. Moonshine, she'd say, isn't just science, it's spiritual. And she wasn't wrong. The way the spices rise and fall with each swirl feels like incantation, like you're summoning something equal parts delicious and illegal. As the batch simmers, you glance at the window. The yard is dark, but you can almost feel the presence of lawmen somewhere in the county, sniffing around for clues. Let them sniff. All they'll detect from your house tonight is the unmistakable aroma of holiday warmth and familial affection. If anything, they'll assume you're the type of woman who hands out homemade ornaments and hugs, not contraband liquor. Still, you remain cautious. You wipe the counters, hiding stray grains of sugar. You cover the still with your floral kitchen towel embroidered with the words "Bless this mess," which has warded off suspicion more effectively than any legal counsel could. You keep your spice tins open, ready to demonstrate late-night baking should anyone knock unexpectedly. You taste a spoonful of the batch. It warms your tongue, then your throat, then your entire soul. Notes of cinnamon glide in first, followed by the bright spark of clove and the soft, nostalgic sweetness of vanilla. You close your eyes. Perfect, comforting, cozy enough to disguise a crime. A soft creak echoes from the back porch. You freeze, listen, then relax. It's just the wind nudging the rocking chair, or possibly the raccoon who's been breaking into your compost bin for 3 weeks. Either way, no badge-wearing trouble arrives. Not tonight. You pour the batch carefully into cooling jars, their glass clinking softly like a chorus of tiny bells. You line them up on the counter, admiring the warm amber glow. If the angels sang, this is what it would sound like. If the law saw, this is what jail would look like. You wipe your hands on your apron, satisfied. Another flawless batch. Another quiet victory. Another night where spice and secrecy blend seamlessly into survival. Your grandmother always said the holidays had a magic all their own. Turns out that magic is even stronger when bottled. You sit in the courthouse, hands folded neatly, posture perfect. A deputy swears he saw you near the old mill with suspicious jars. You blink politely. You do not confirm, you do not deny. You answer every question with phrases so vague they could double as weather reports. I suppose it's possible, you say, with the serene calm of a woman who has practiced being legally unhelpful since childhood. The jury watches, mesmerized. The judge sighs. The prosecutor starts sweating. Southern women weren't just making moonshine. They were pioneering the art of evasive hospitality. Courtrooms have their own smell. Old wood, too many bodies in too small a space, and the faint aroma of justice slightly past its expiration date. You sit gracefully in your chair, ankles crossed, gloves impeccable, hat angled just so. You look like a woman whose only crimes are excessive generosity and overwatering her hydrangeas, which, of course, is exactly the point. The courtroom murmurs quiet as the prosecutor approaches. He clears his throat dramatically, as though preparing to deliver the performance of a lifetime. You breathe slowly, evenly, like a woman who has absolutely no intention of helping him. "Ma'am," he begins, "is it true you were seen carrying several jars down the road near the old mill last Thursday?" You tilt your head, just a little. The tilt is important. It makes you look thoughtful, vulnerable, and faintly confused, which is the holy trinity of legal defense for Southern women. Well, you say in your softest voice, Thursday was quite a busy day. Lots of folks out and about. Hard to say who saw what. A beat of silence follows. The jury leans forward. The prosecutor blinks twice. You smile warmly, as though you've just offered everyone in the room a slice of pound cake. He tries again. Were you, or were you not, in possession of jars at that time? You sigh gently, the sigh of a woman contemplating life's great mysteries. Jars are so common, don't you think? The whole town uses them. For pickles, for preserves, for buttons. Hard to imagine not seeing someone with jars. The judge pinches the bridge of his nose. The court stenographer pauses, uncertain whether what you said counts as an answer. The prosecutor inhales sharply, visibly recalculating his entire approach. He decides to try intimidation. Ma'am, these were suspicious jars. You raise your eyebrows with the polite shock of a Sunday school teacher hearing gossip. Goodness, you murmur. I didn't know jars came in that category. A ripple of quiet laughter moves through the jury box. The prosecutor reddens. Please just answer the question, he says tightly. Yes or no? You fold your hands unbothered. I try to live with an open mind, you reply. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes things are more complicated than they seem. This is not an answer. It is, however, an attitude. You were trained for this, raised on stories of foremothers who faced judges with nothing but lace gloves and linguistic acrobatics. Southern politeness isn't about being nice, it's about being untouchably evasive. A nod without agreeing, a smile without admitting, a sentence that sounds complete but contains no actionable content whatsoever. You deploy your final tactic, the gentle redirect. Bless your heart, Mr. Prosecutor, you say sweetly. I admire your determination. Truly, but I just don't think I can be certain about any of that. The phrase bless your heart lands like a velvet-wrapped sledgehammer. The prosecutor withers. The judge closes his eyes. The jury collectively melts into a puddle of sympathy for you. By the time your testimony ends, you have said nothing of substance. Not one incriminating detail. Not one clarifying statement. Nothing but cloud-soft phrases and polite confusion. You leave the stand as immaculate as when you approached it. Outside the courthouse, you adjust your hat, inhale the fresh air, and walk down the steps with quiet dignity. You survived cross-examination, deflected interrogation, and outmaneuvered a man with a law degree. Your grandmother would be so proud. And somewhere behind you, the prosecutor quietly vows never to question a Southern woman again. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your blankets and let the quiet hum of the room smooth out the edges of your thoughts, take a moment to appreciate just how much these 1920s Southern women carried with them. They weren't just homemakers or church singers, or the friendly faces passing pies across white picket fences. They were tacticians, diplomats, chemists, magicians of misdirection. They survived Prohibition with nothing but grit, good manners, and a shocking ability to weaponize sweet tea. They outsmarted sheriffs who genuinely tried their best, deputies who really should have known better, and federal agents who severely underestimated the power of floral dresses and polite smiles. They built networks stronger than steel, friendships, family ties, secret knocks on screen doors, and they did it all while raising children, hosting potlucks, and making sure everyone's hems were properly pressed. As you drift towards sleep, think about the worlds these women balanced, the chaos of midnight distilling, the laughter of neighbourhood gatherings, the quiet hope that their jars stayed hidden just long enough for the law to lose interest. They lived in a time where survival wasn't dramatic, it was daily. And yet they found room for humour, creativity, and community in the middle of it all. And maybe whisper a quiet thank you, not because you needed moonshine to get through your week, but because their resilience is stitched into every convenience you enjoy now. Indoor plumbing, honest taxes, beverage options that don't come with legal consequences. History may be messy and a little ridiculous, but it reminds us just how stubborn, hopeful, and endlessly inventive people can be. So rest easy tonight. You're warm, safe, comfortable, and blissfully free of revenuers hiding in your bushes. Let the day fall away. Let sleep drift in. Good night.